Hi, my name is Gadd Danno, and I am an internet survival guru. Well, it's the next morning, and the house is still at 67 degrees, so it wasn't that cold last night. And the coal I put in overnight lasted. I just gave it a shake, and look at those sparks fly. So there they are, the twin titans of Homestead heating, coal and wood. Down in my basement, I just have my fuel pile. Got some cardboard that I need to get rid of, I use for kindling. We burn trash if it's burnable. If I need to split a little wood for kindling, I can do it down here. I also find that when I split wood outside, it just naturally creates a lot of kindling that just falls on the ground, and after you split a few cords, you can just bag the stuff up without having to waste your time with a splitting hatchet or anything. It's just a natural byproduct of the process. Also down here, I've got the tools that I use most with my wood and coal furnace. I'll get into some of these tools as I discuss the stove. Now my stove is a shelter stove. It's made by the U.S. Stove Company. It's also the exact same model. This is a Shelter 2626, but the exact same model is sold as under the Fire Chief brand. When it's not sold at Menards, it's called a Fire Chief. And they have the 100,000 BTU model, which is this one, and then they've got 150,000 BTU model, and they also have a 200,000 BTU model, so you get what you need. I do recommend that if in doubt, you size up. If you think not sure if the 100,000 is enough for your house, maybe go for the 150,000. There's also the added benefit when you're heating that you can fill it up at night extra full, and it'll last until you wake up, or at least it'll give you 6 or 7 hours before you have to tend to the stove. So the larger capacity you have, the better night's sleep you can get. The first thing I would recommend when anyone gets a box stove like this is get thermometers for your stove. You can see one on the fuel door, fuel entry door. I've got a thermometer on there, and I've got one on the exhaust pipe. I've even got one right where it enters into the chimney system, and those three thermometers are very useful in letting you know if you're running your fire right. If it's too hot, it'll tell you. If it's too cold, it'll tell you. Creosote formation is a problem at lower temperatures, and at higher temperatures a lot of unburned fuel and heat is going up your chimney, and it's just a waste of your fuel source. So definitely invest in some thermometers. You want them really in those three places: on the furnace, on the cast iron door, very shortly after where the exhaust is exiting, and then right before it gets into the chimney or before it exits your house. You'll find the exit exhaust thermometer is directly related to the draft settings on the bottom door. And as a general rule of thumb, the tightest draft settings possible that still allow your home to be comfortable are what you want, because that's preventing the tight draft settings prevent heat and exhaust from rapidly exiting into the chimney. So set it as tight as you can that is still heating your house appropriately. Now before you open up your steel box stove, I always recommend opening the bottom draft. That increases the draft drastically, and it helps the exhaust to go up the chimney instead of smoke coming out into your basement or house. So open this up. On this model, it has a secondary burn system, so you pull out this rod, and what that rod does is it's basically a metal shelf on the top that when you push it in, it traps the gases in the stove and increases burning efficiency. When you pull it out, it opens it open wide, and the exhaust can easily exit, and that's good when you're opening the door because you don't want the smoke to come out. And this is just some, earlier I had some wood and coal burning in there. Now you're going to find that wood and coal both burn a little differently. Coal reacts a lot to the bottom draft setting. That feeds the underneath air, the underfed air. And wood reacts a lot to the draft blower, which is a forced fan that can rapidly heat up the stove, or if you're without power, you can just open up the cover and it'll let air flow naturally without any power as well. So if you're thinking about getting one of these stoves, I highly recommend that you get one with a secondary burn system. A lot of them don't have that, and that just kind of increases your burning efficiency from maybe 60-65% efficient, get you up into the 75+% efficiency. So it's just going to save you money. And these things are so heavy, you want to buy the right stove the first time. So I recommend getting the secondary burners. They all just have like a rod like this for the secondary burn. Now I think you're going to find that when you burn coal, it produces a lot more ash than wood, and that can quickly cause draft problems as it clogs up the bottom tray. So a couple of things you like to do is I use my poker tool to go in there, push all the way to the back. A lot of times it mounds up at the back more than the front. And I use my poker tool to get that in the center, pull it back, level it off so that air can still flow through. Also, it kind of cakes in the corners and tends to build up, so I get the tool and really get into those back corners and pull that ash out with my poker tool. There's some wood and coal ash. I like to dump my ash into a metal container. Since there's a lot of it, I don't like to be running up and down the stairs all the time, so I like to just collect it in these larger steel trash can containers and then just take all the ashes out at once. I never like to fill it more than about a third full of ashes, or it gets to be really too heavy to comfortably handle. So when I dump the ash, I have my lid ready. I don't have it too full, so there's plenty of room for the ash to kick up and still not escape the rim. And I dump it and lid it as fast as I can to keep the ash dust from coming out, because that stuff tends to get everywhere and make a mess. Now when I load my coal fire, coal is actually very cooling. If you just throw a bunch of fresh coal on top of your fire, you'll knock your fire temperature down 100 to 200 degrees, and it can have a drastic impact on your house temperature, especially in the heart of winter when you're well below zero, double digits below zero. So the best coal loading protocol is to always rake the coals forward. That way the burning coal is always forward and separate from the fresh coal. That you load the fresh coal in the back, and that way the only area where the fresh coal is hitting the burning coal is right in the center. It's not too much. It doesn't cool down the temperature too much, and it slowly spreads to the back coal like a fuse effect. So it won't drastically knock down the temperature of your fire. For loading at night, you follow the same procedure, and you tend to bank the stove. You're gonna, you heat the coal up a lot higher than you do during the day. It's the same as like filling up a pickup trailer or a flatbed trailer. You load it higher in the center than on the edges. You really don't want to go any higher than your fire brick, but you can go a little higher in the center of the stove where it's not touching the stove metal or the fire brick. And so you just kind of heap it up in the back like that, and that'll allow you to get through the night with, maybe you'll get 6 or 7 hours of sleep when you're burning this lower quality coal like I am. If you're used to high quality Kentucky bituminous coal or Pennsylvania anthracite coal, you probably aren't dealing with double digits below zero anyway, and even if you were, you've got a coal that's much higher BTUs per weight, and people even in upstate New York talk about getting easily 10-12 hour burn times, where with my lignite coal I can only get maybe 6 hours or something if it's really cold, and then you would really have to wake up and fill the stove, or you're going to have a dropping house temperature. The only other tool worthy of note, flashlight to see what's going on in the stove. Every once in a while I get a nasty clinker, and to shake ashes down, it kind of gets caught. The shaker shaft gets caught, and I kind of have to tap on it or hammer on the metal to get it to crush the clinker and allow me to continue to drop ash. And then in the morning, as you're always raking your coals forward for your loading process, clinkers tend to form and coagulate towards the front of the stove. Clinkers are really just the impurities in coal that aren't carbon, and a lot of it is iron and minerals, and they tend to just fuse together and form rock-like structures. Some of them get very large, and the best time to pull those out is in the morning when your fire is very weak and you can easily pick out what's a clinker and what is coal. Now, when you're shaking your stove, there you can see it shaking and dropping some hot coals. It's okay. It's probably better to a little overshake than to undershake. The air flow is so important, so don't be scared to shake that rod. Not only that, but dropping coals down there, it's not really a problem. They continue to burn and generate heat for your home down there. And there's a benefit where as the draft air flows through here from your settings here that allows air to come in, it's preheated air, and that preheated air more easily ignites the gases released from coal and wood, especially lignite and bituminous coal and wood. They benefit from preheated air that gives you a more complete combustion before the hot air and gases exit into your chimney. So don't be afraid to have some hot coals down in your ashtray. When your coal starts harder than wood, a lot of times with minor kindling you can easily get a wood fire going, and it's no trick. Coal is a little harder, especially the harder coals like Pennsylvania anthracite, and probably the best practice is to start the fire with wood, get a good bed of coals going, and once the fire is maybe down to just hot red coals, you can pile on your coal, and don't pile it anymore. You don't want to suffocate the fire, so you should see flames dancing between the cracks of the layer of coal that you put down. If you're not seeing any fire get through the cracks, you've probably put on too much. But if you have a nice layer of wood coals before you put on the coal, it's going to take a light. and then once the coal's going, it'll stay going as long as you've got a certain mass. Coal doesn't burn very well if you have a very small amount in the burning chamber. It's like coal needs other burning coal to burn. Where you can burn a small amount of wood, it's difficult to burn just a little bit of coal because the ignition temperature is higher. You can burn a little bit of wood, but the coal, you put a little bit in there and it'll just kind of go out on you. So when you're burning coal, you have to kind of get a good fire going, put in a fair amount of coal, and then once you got a certain amount of coal burning, it's easy to add. This is probably the most important setting besides knowing what your radiance temperature, stove temperature is from your front door, and this is your initial exhaust temperature. You want that in the silver, and that's at about 230 degrees to 475 degrees. You want that red indicator arrow in the silver. That means you're burning pretty well, you're not forming creosote, and you're not way up here wasting a lot of heat up your chimney. And so it's really invaluable to have one of these thermometers. Now your wood or coal stove gives a tremendous amount of radiant heat. It's very warm down here in my basement. It warms the cement floor and the wooden floor structure up above. It gets it all warm, and it's been said that a warm basement means a warm house. Not only does it throw radiant heat down here, which eventually goes up the stairs, but it has a blower, an electrical blower that goes through the house with air ducting, so you get a double whammy of heat. It's fantastic. I'll tell you what, I live in an old farmhouse, and the chimney system is how they used to design homes, where the chimney starts in the basement, goes all the way up through the center of the house. Now I'm on the top floor of the house, goes up through the attic and then to the roof. So I've got 30 feet of radiating brick surface. So even if my furnace is running really hot, there's 30 feet of brick to absorb that heat and radiate it into the house. It's really the best possible system. So if you are purpose building a house or buying a house with an eye for heating with wood or coal, get one with a long chimney like that. Now I know some of you are thinking, what good is your forced air furnace when the power goes out? Well, if you have a wood or coal furnace, it can be run 100% off your ash door draft settings and your over fire draft settings that you can manually set. And even without electricity force blowing the air, which speeds up the heat circulation, right now the forced air is not blowing at all, but I can just feel a lot of heat coming out of this grate. It's just induction heating. Hot air rises, and a whole house air ducting system is fantastic for distributing heat all over your house without a bit of electricity. So you don't have to be worried about the power going out. They call it chit heat. It's coming all the time. I can just feel the air moving and heat coming without the furnace blowing a bit. And there through the window, the upstairs bathroom window, you can see next year's heat. A little bit, there's a pile there too. I've got about 5 cords of wood. It's drying out dries out very rapidly in the wintertime when all the moisture drops out of the air. It all drops out of the air as frost, so there's very little moisture, sucks moisture out of the logs very well, and I've basically got next year's heat taken care of. It's a great feeling.